Check out these chairs I made. Well, it has been about 3 years since I've done my last project video. In that time, I've gotten married, got a new house, got a new car, got a new job 2 times, and as you can see, I have a new workshop as well. Today's project is going to be pretty cool. It's going to be a couple of these C-shaped chairs I was contracted to build, and there are about 500 individual pieces between them. This is going to take a while. Let's get right down to it. I'm going to start cutting down some plywood. I drove all the way up to Toledo to get this plywood, but I got to see my friend Dave while I was at it, so that was cool. We're going to start with some of the large panels. Some of these layers are more solid than others. This is going to be a solid piece. That's going to be a solid piece up here. This is going to be the main component layer. That's what will be all broken apart. But for now, I got to cut these out on the CNC, so we'll start with those. This was the very first operation I've run on this machine. I literally just got it installed. I am very pleased. Go get yourself a Onefinity. They're pretty good. Now with those large panels cut out, I can now move on to what I'm calling the accessory panels. And this is where things start to slow down. Because this is only 2/3 of the 236 pieces of these accessories that I have to not only cut out with my wiggle saw, but then flush trim on the router table, and then spend an inordinate amount of time sanding and smoothing to be able to get these pieces ready to move to the next step. And only whenever that phase is done will I show you my feet. Now I've gone over some big elements and I've gone over some small elements, so now I figure it's a good time for me to go over what this project actually is for. A fantastic designer by the name of Jeremy Slagle from Slagle Designs reached out to me and asked to help make some chairs for the Created Conference that he hosts here in Columbus, Ohio. Now there is a conversational segment as part of this conference, and usually in that kind of instance, there's going to be 2 chairs up on a stage. You see this in a lot of different presentations and conferences, and they asked me to make the chairs for this one. The cool part about the design we came up with, based on the initial sketches provided by Jeremy, they wanted the shape of the chairs to match the shape of the logo. I was really inspired by this idea, and I decided to offer taking things a step further by not only making these cool chairs, but by also trying to give homage to an iconic bench style from Herman Miller and a product they have called the Nelson bench. Now, the most eye-catching characteristic about this bench is its slat wood design, and that is exactly what I'm trying to replicate for these 2 chairs. These are all the wooden slats that I need to complete one chair. There's 88 total pieces spread across 4 different lengths. And while accuracy is very important, so is consistency. Now to that end, I went ahead and made this jig that I can flush up against my miter saw here with measurements at 30, 21 1/4, 12 1/2, and 10 inches. Those are the 4 different slat lengths. Now I could have just left the lines and just visually lined up the pieces and cut them off, but having a hard stop provides tactile feedback to make sure you have your piece at the proper location, and it should go a long way to helping make sure all of these cuts are pretty much exactly the same. Having all of these slats finished up gets me a lot closer to being done with these chairs, and to that end, I've made this MDF frame that allows me to slot in all of the slat pieces and then apply this last one in with a little bit of force. All I have to do now is apply some wood glue to the bottom of this and brad nail them into the corners, and then that's the general assembly of the component layers. Each of these corners has a hole behind it so that the wood glue doesn't cause it to get stuck to the frame, and it also allows you to push them out. The end of this project is finally starting to come into view, especially now that I have these component layers glued up into their main assemblies. Over here I have the center section, which goes between the 2 flange layers, and I have 2 of these which go on the outside of that. These are for the light cabinets, at least one of them is, the other side is going to be empty. On the front, we have these trim layers. These need to be easily removable without tools, and I didn't want any visible fasteners. So I found these really cool hardware elements. This is a little clear cup that you screw into the panel, and this side is a little clear ball with a glue pad on the back. So all you have to do is drill a hole in the corners so that everything is flushed once it comes together. So for this side, I attached the ball end of it, and on the assembly here, the cups. Now the cool part is whenever these 2 layers come together, they give you a really nice satisfying click. and the seam pretty much disappears. Now that this first chair is structurally complete and finished, it's time to move on to my favorite part, which is adding LEDs to the project. Each leg here is going to have 3 strips of LEDs, of FCOB LEDs, which should help with the diffusion, and my favorite color temperature, 4000K, thank you very much. There's going to be about a 3 3/4 inch separation between this plane and the top, I guess the back side of the acrylic. So that should be enough vertical space to allow for proper diffusion, so you won't see the strips and the hot spots. Aside from that, I'm going to be adding some black ACM, some glossy black ACM to these vertical faces around the C. And that's just to kind of encapsulate this light box so that no light comes out the top and so that everything is focused to come out of the front of the acrylic panel. Oddly enough, one of my favorite parts of this whole chair was a complete afterthought. These are for the feet of the chair. These 3 components, so I guess 2.5, come together to form the overall assembly of the feet, which is this right here. Hopefully looking at it this way might help make it a bit more understandable. The idea is it sits on the floor like this, and the feet slide in the grooves, and they're just friction fit in there. So this allows them to be removable, so you can rotate the chair in different orientations, and you can still provide a little bit of a gap between any sort of abrasive surfaces that may be on the floor. Overall, I think these legs were a really cool addition that I'm glad I spent the time to make. I think this LED lighting turned out awesome. The wiring's all finished up, the blocking is put in place, and finally, I have the feet applied. That is to say, I think this chair is completely finished up. With the face panel here, I think it goes really nicely over the front of the chair. And again, it just clips nicely onto the frame. And then you have a nice, even, diffused panel of light that I think will look really good on stage. The greatest concern from the design standpoint from the get-go was how strong and robust this chair would be with no supports down here under the opening of the C. And I think with how I put it all together, there's no worries whatsoever about this thing coming apart. I love how this first chair turned out, and I was pleased as punch to be involved with this conference at all. Matter of fact, if any of you are interested in learning more about the conference or attending, I'll have a link below down in the description so you can check it out for yourself. Now, the conference isn't for about another 6 months, so I got plenty of time to knock out the second chair. But that also means I won't really be able to have much video content on these 2 chairs up on the stage. Didn't feel like waiting that long to post the video. Too excited. I will, however, make sure that I post some cool videos and shots of that whenever the time comes over on Instagram. So go check that out if this is something that interests you. I have a lot of other cool projects there as well. Hopefully my next video won't take another 2 or 3 years to come out, but you won't know for sure unless you're subscribed, and it would be really cool if you did, because that means a lot to me. This is still a small channel, but I really enjoy putting in the work to kind of share the creative process for these kinds of projects, hopefully with the intent of, well, I guess, inspiring and innovating others to be able to do the same. Let me know if you have any questions about how I built anything or any decisions I made along the fabrication process. But otherwise, hopefully I'll see you guys next time.